Computer. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the first HUGS leadership and activist training on its own. We have amazing guest speakers every week. And today I have a great pleasure to first of all introduce Dr. Uber. How are you today? And if you can unmute yourself and definitely let us know who you are, and definitely excited to learn everything we can from you today. Just gotta mute yourself, please. Yes.
Can you hear me now, Vlad?
Very good, thank you.
Excellent. As you said, I'm Dr. Colleen Huber. I'm a naturopathic medical doctor in Tempe, Arizona. And for the last several months, since really the COVID era began, I've written 5 scientific articles regarding COVID. 2 of them on masks, and including the most recent one where the main author is Boris Borovoy. And I've also written on lockdown and COVID-19 as a nutritional deficiency. That's what I've been doing for the last several months. In addition to, I still treat cancer patients. That has been my main focus, my main work for the last 14 years.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Thank you so much for being available and share your powerful knowledge with us. In this time, I think this is what Hugs of a Mask represents more than anything, is to provide alternative perspective and empower people with real information so they can make more educated decisions and choices about their health and actually their own community. So we are very happy to have you on board and share your knowledge with us.
Thank you.
So if you'd like to share, what have you come up with in the recent? I'm understanding you have some new research that you were able to compile, as well as maybe share some insight for us, as well as anything from before that you can pass on in terms of the knowledge that you acquired, what's happening currently in the world, and obviously before this is, we know for sure what's happening now has just been building up over the years, right? So, and it kind of came to the critical mass where a lot of conflicting information comes on, but again, doctors like yourself and many others shedding a light on important information. So I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Well, it was only yesterday morning that Boris Borovoy, who is the main author, and I'm the second author on this paper, we published our paper on masks and the particulate matter found on face masks. We looked at all kinds of face masks. We looked at surgical masks and N95 respirators, as well as cloth masks. We opened the N95 and the surgical mask right out of the box, took it out of the plastic wrap, and looked at it microscopically. We were actually very surprised to see that there was loose particulate matter, and that we found under the microscope. The question is, if there is loose particulate matter on masks, then what happens when you breathe in from those masks? The thing is that it's been measured that people who are wearing masks have a higher inspiratory flow. That is, they are breathing in more forcefully than those of us without masks. The reason that they're doing that, of course, is they're not quite getting enough oxygen to satisfy their body's needs for oxygen. And so since they're breathing in more forcefully, I think they should be assured that every single piece of every fiber, every little particle of dirt on the masks are completely intact and unable to be inhaled. Because if they are inhaled, then there is a real problem. And pulmonary fibrosis can be a risk from that. So we're very concerned about that. We wrote about that. We know that pulmonary fibrosis is one of the most horrible diseases that a person can face. And so we had to write about that and warn about that. I mean, when we see and adults being masked, we've really got a society-wide problem for the many people who are now choosing to wear masks. Full information, because you're reading the story, and basically, but the mainstream media is not.
Yeah, no, it's insane even to think that we are in this day and age where we have to explain to people that any type of restriction to the nasal and mouth passages should be even discussed, right? Like that's the first thing. Like it's unobstructed for a reason, right? So to put anything in front of it, you are obstructing the airflow. Whatever you want to have, how many people are able to survive by having masks like surgeons, etc. It's regardless in terms of, we are designed perfect in our nature, so we're not supposed to have anything obstructions to our breathing capacities, right? And then going next level, which you are discussing, which is even more important, is that the type of coverings that people are using can definitely impede their health, and not just just restrict, but actually damage severely. And it's insane to think that exactly what you're discussing, that even without any altercation to the mask itself, because we understand once the mask become moist because of people breathing, that's gonna start breaking down the mask. But even before you start that process, already just a brand new mask, if they have loose particles, which you can definitely inhale, and those are small plastic particles that can definitely impede your health, right?
Yes, correct. It's been found that the most dangerous size of particles is actually 20 nanometers in length. This is so small. Anyway, to be absolutely certain that none of these masks will have any particles that will be friable or crumbly to a size of that nature. I mean, even larger particles, of course, can be a risk. The larger particles tend to lodge in the bronchi and the bronchioles, but the 20 nanometer size and in that neighborhood of size is the most dangerous for lodging in the alveoli. Now, the alveoli are the air exchange sacs of the lungs. You know, so this is where we are actually taking in oxygen and emitting carbon dioxide. So what happens if pulmonary fibrosis arises? This is a problem of a matrix formation of like scar tissue over the alveoli, and it very, very slowly suffocates a person. This is not something that you want to risk. You've probably seen, many of the people who have tuned in have likely seen commercials for class action lawsuits regarding mesothelioma arising from asbestos particles, tiny asbestos particles. But asbestos was not really sewn into a mask that was held over the only gateway to our lungs. You know, the gateway to our airways is being completely covered with these masks if we wear them. And this is why it's even more of a risk, because the amount of dirt and tiny fibers that are on them are so close and so easily inhaled. This is a risk that I think is enormous and must be considered actually immediately. We actually consider this quite an emergency, because it was only recently that school children resumed in class schooling, and they're being forced to wear these masks. So it's bad enough adults are wearing these masks, employees are being forced by employers, you know, people in social circles are being kind of shamed or coerced or socially pressured to wear these masks, and that is really a problem. One of your guests is commenting, why would a woman in labor to give childbirth be forced to wear a mask? That is absolutely absurd. You know, not only is she desperately gasping for the air that she needs, I mean, she needs all the help she gets to give birth, but the poor baby, you know, is really getting oxygen starved as well. I mean, the idea of masking a pregnant woman is doubly horrendous. It's really bad enough to mask people who are not pregnant, but pregnant, I can't imagine, you know, when society finally learns about the horrible magnitude of this error.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, like I'm just baffled by this, obviously, as a lot of people on this call. You know, we're definitely preaching to the choir, but my hope is, you know, this recording will be viewed by people that may be sitting on the fence, and maybe let's come from that angle and really explain, you know, and I'll do my part, and you being an actual doctor, I would appreciate your perspective and maybe filling the gaps where I would say, I'm a health and wellness coach by trade, so I've been, you know, studying the body and then working with different clients, and that what I would usually explain to people is making a comparison to something else that people can relate. And, you know, people, you know, would come to me and sometimes they would only drink 1 glass of water, right? A day, that is. And I would explain to them that the requirement for you to drink the water for your body to be healthy is at the very minimum 2 liters on average for average person, right? Now, are you able to survive with 1 glass of water? Well, you obviously been doing it and maybe even drinking 8 cups of water, but is that optimal? Is that actually healthy? Definitely not. Are your bodies able to cope and survive? Yeah, our body is designed to survive. So this is almost like I'm doing my best to make a comparison when I'm discussing this now with people in this current situation, saying that, yeah, you're not going to drop dead necessarily at one point wearing a mask, but are you really living an optimum healthy lifestyle? First of all, wearing a mask on a regular basis and limiting the oxygen intake. And at the same time, how much damage are you actually causing? You might not see that damage, immediately, of course. However, compound effect, who knows what kind of ailments you can have. And to go to the next level, it's one thing to have an adult being restricted with airflow, with people already kind of been grown and the body already formulated, and they don't have an extra development necessaries like a child would be, or a pregnant woman would be, because these requirements double the time, or actually triple the time, because the fetus was growing on the inside. So coming from the place of how much extra oxygen would be required, and any detriment in terms of limit of oxygen, and at the same time, as you said, particles coming into the body, and at the same time, if people wearing, let's say, cloth masks, right? So then there's a germs and bacteria can be created because of the moisture in the mask, and then you're going to keep inhaling that back. How much damage that can create for a person, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, speaking to your point about oxygen intake, we know from 1931, Nobel Prize winning biochemist Otto Warburg was awarded the Nobel Prize for his discovery that cancer begins, for example, with damage to the mitochondria and damage caused by, say, radiation or another assault on the body. But basically, the original cause of the whatever it comes from the outside, what happens on the inside of the body is a loss of oxygen. That injury to the mitochondria resulted in a loss of oxygen, and that in turn gives rise to allowing an environment that allows cancer to form. So much research since his time, since 1931, has verified that Dr. Warburg was correct in finding this. So, this is another reason that we don't want to decrease oxygen. Now, you may have heard some arguments, especially in the mainstream media, where, masks are very heavily advertised. It is very heavily propagandized that one should wear a mask. And so there is some skepticism there in the mainstream media as to whether a mask is really reducing oxygen for the person. Now, if you would consider that the United States Occupational Safety and Health Administration, known as OSHA, had actually determined standards of oxygen, ambient oxygen, the oxygen in the air that surrounds us, that is optimal for human health. Their studies had found that this is between 19.5 and I believe the upper limit 23.5 for optimal working conditions, because this was a labor concern in the United States to make sure that people had enough oxygen to breathe. Coal miners and others, sometimes find themselves in low oxygen environments, but the OSHA standard is a minimum of 19.5. Now, it's been measured that if you put on a mask, within a very short amount of time, measurable in seconds, that oxygen inside the mask will drop to 17.4. This is why the mask wearers are breathing so much more forcefully, because that oxygen has dropped due to the mask. And therefore, they need to inhale with more force. Well, as Boris Borovoy and I discovered, that is a risk for dislodging the fibers and the particulate, just plain dirt that is on brand new masks straight out of the packaging. So we have a number of problems here. One, insufficient oxygen, and especially, as you said, for developing children, this is an enormous concern. But also for the particles that this desperate inhalation can bring into the lungs. That is of great concern. And, we do consider this an emergency because of widespread masking in the United States. People have to wake up to this really pretty soon in order to avoid long-term damage.
Dr. Huber, it's Dan here, and it's so wonderful to finally hear you in person after all of our Twitter conversations and email correspondence and everything like that. And thank you so much for coming tonight. is timed extremely well, and especially with something that the leadership and I were talking about today. I won't go into too much detail, but something that we are working on over here in Canada, which speaks to the level of urgency that you're talking about, is we are now looking at using a self-defense citizen arrest act is a federal law in Canada. We're looking at placing mayors and local officials under a citizen's arrest based on an ongoing assault that is taking place, and especially for the sake of our children, as you're talking about right now. Like this is something that it sounds like, and please clarify if I'm embellishing, but it sounds like this is a really serious issue, and the people that could be the most harmed by it are the people who have to wear the mask the longest, which in this particular case is the children. Would you agree with that, or is that maybe a little extreme?
No, I don't think that's extreme at all, Dan, and it is a pleasure to talk to you also. But as you know, many children are being forced into masks for their entire school day. Now, the problem of this wearing of masks is compounded if those children are also having what we would, under normal circumstances, considered to be a healthy activity, such as, exercise, recreation, recess, outdoors, running around and playing. But if they're having to do that with masks, of course, that is of great concern during their physical education classes. So, but it also the long hours, the developing lungs, yes. Now, I'm very interested in the fact that there may be some citizens' arrests of any officials that and try to enforce such a horrible policy. You perhaps know of a situation in Palm Beach County, Florida, in which the entire city council and mayor were served with a complaint. In the complaint, it was said that there is no law that has given anyone, any government, the authority to regulate human breathing and human heart rate. And because of that, and if anybody can find such a law, I would like to see it, because certainly it is unknown, as far as I know, in the United States. Of course, I'm not an attorney and I only speak as a layperson, but I don't remember growing up with anybody being entitled to regulate human breathing, to regulate my breathing, your breathing, or heart rate. And masks certainly do affect both of those.
Yes.
So these legal questions are very concerning, I think.
We are. And then to build on the legal questions, maybe you can speak a little bit to the Nuremberg Code and not any type of medical procedure would require a person consent, right?
Yes. If you consider the tremendous bloodshed and suffering during the Holocaust, during World War II, and all of the people who died and suffered during that time, and the lessons that we learned, and the Nazis who were put on trial at Nuremberg. What was the major lesson from that time? I believe, as Attorney Mary Holland has said, that the major lesson we learned from World War II, or should have learned, is that medical procedures must not be forced on individuals. If we have learned anything from that time of history, and we really should have learned from the history if we don't want to repeat it, is that medical procedures must not be forced on individuals, and masking is clearly a medical procedure because it does change heart rate, and it does change oxygen, and it does change carbon dioxide in the lungs. It does produce hypercapnia. These are immediate effects. So let alone the long-term effects that we wrote about in our recent paper.
Yeah, no, and that's, I think, the biggest point that we have to, and we might ask your help to, put it all in the wording and actually create a legal statement document of some sort, because the irony, obviously, with the fact checkers that only got created in this year because all the truth is coming out, is when I shared the Nuremberg Code on Instagram as one of the pictures on our account, the fact checker said specifically that the masks were not part of the Nuremberg Code discussion. And obviously it was not. It was discussed in the medical procedure. So we might ask your help just to kind of, in writing, to create a linkage how mask is actually a medical procedure, which you obviously stated right now. It you know, affects the breathing, affects the heart rate, it affects a lot of other immediate physical functions, right?
Yes, and I would be happy to participate in trying to draft that document to the extent I can as a physician, and as long as an attorney has the final look over of that document, I certainly can attest to the fact that it is a medical procedure by definition of changing some of our physiology, the parameters of our physiology. So yes, I agree to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And then we might want to try to reach to Dr. Gold and then see if you guys, if both of you doctors can collaborate, because Dr. Gold herself, you know, she's a doctor and a lawyer. So that would be a really great example to set a precedent for you in the United States, and obviously use the same document for us here in Canada and potentially around the world. As we know, UK right now is going into the heavy second lockdown with extreme measures. And Australia is also a place, Victoria specifically, it's been under martial law. They never actually ease up any measures there. So I'm not sure if Dr. Boris was able to join us as well, maybe share some of the insight, or just it's yourself today, Dr. Uber?
I thought he might be able to join us, and
okay.
I
see a phone number here. You can unmute yourself if that's him. I'm not sure. 289 phone number code there to maybe share some of his insights and some of the input. Otherwise, if there's anything else you would like to share, some of the insights, some of the knowledge maybe with us.
I actually just have a question for Dr. Huber regarding the mesothelioma cancer, which is probably the hardest thing in the world to say. But I'm still a little, I don't quite understand how the risk of mesothelioma cancer comes in with the mask, or whether that's correlated to the lung disease vulnerability.
To the plastic particles probably too, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. If I may. So we know that mesothelioma is a type of cancer that begins with the particularly sticky little particles of asbestos, very sticky, the particles that can be inhaled and can stab or pierce the alveoli of the lungs. However, they're so sticky that they cannot be exhaled. So they stay there. And as foreign bodies, they're beginning an inflammatory process. That inflammatory process is the assault that Dr. Warburg talked about that eventually can lead to a case of cancer. Now, the comparable situation, I don't think is identical. That is, I'm not necessarily saying that masks would cause mesothelioma per se. However, that there are particles that are being inhaled from masks necessarily because there's a constant fan blowing. There's a constant inspiratory airflow, and we have seen just loose dirt on the mask when we looked at them microscopically at 40 times magnification. We just saw dirt. We saw dirty fibers. We saw loose fibers, lots of loose fibers. By the way, especially on the cloth masks, there are tight fibers, but there are a lot of loose fibers after one laundering. So I thought that was, yeah.
And then in terms of the like the surgical masks, when you examined the brand new mask, you also found loose particles. It wasn't just after wearing them; it was a brand new mask, correct?
Brand new. For the surgical mask and the N95 mask, we unwrapped them from the box and the plastic packaging, and immediately, without use, looked at them with the microscope.
Yeah.
And with the cloth mask in our paper, it was worn once for one day, and then it was laundered and not worn again. So after laundering it, then we looked at it, found loads of loose fibers. I would say in every tiny visual field, about the size of the period at the end of a sentence, 4 to 5 loose fibers that were just kind of dangling there. Now, if you're careful about what is in front of the gateway to your lungs, then you probably don't want something like a cloth mask or any kind of laundered fabric in front of it. Yet if it's not laundered, then the cotton dust that, bisonosis is a problem.
Yeah, and obviously, as we all know, as humans, when you do the laundry, with every laundry, there's always going to be even more particles being separated. So people might think, oh, it's a freshly washed mask, it's good to go. It's actually can be even worse because everything's just been loosened up even after that wash, right?
Correct. Yes, exactly. And these fibers that to our eye, to the macroscopic view of our eye, they look intact. But when you look at them with a microscope at 40 times magnification, there are all kinds of loose fibers dangling around. So that's of great concern to me, because what can be inhaled is not necessarily something that is seen. It's too small to be seen with the eye.
And then continuing with the cloth mask per se, maybe you can speak a little bit more towards the mold and other things that can build up in the mask, overuse, especially for the children, and then them inhaling that, how detrimental is that to the child's health, especially?
Actually, that will be the subject of our next paper. I don't want to go into too much of it yet, because we're hoping to have that paper out within just a few weeks. Okay. But the mold, yes, is considered a problem, and bacterial pneumonia, you may know, is being reported anecdotally from what I've heard from mask wearers. There are also staph infections. And why would this be? It's because when we have a mask over the face, not only do we have the warm environment from our warm breath, but also there's moisture. Now, you only see this moisture on a cold winter day. When you breathe out, it's a surprising amount of steam or vapor that comes out of your mouth visibly. However, just because that is partially condensed on that cold winter day doesn't mean you're not exhaling moisture every time you exhale. So then the mask is a little bit moist and warm. Well, what is a more comfortable and welcoming environment for all kinds of mold and candida and many bacterial pathogens, but that warm, moist environment?
Yes. No, it makes total sense. And we definitely look forward to the next paper that you're going to publish. The last question I would love to ask you, and then if there's anything else you would like to add, is specifically with people who have asthma or COPD, and they actually thinking, or any other type of existing lung conditions, they actually thinking wearing a mask will protect them for potential harm to their health. Can you speak more to how actually opposite that is the case?
Yes, people are very afraid of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And even that virus is misnamed. The SARS stands for severe acute respiratory distress, and or a severe acute respiratory syndrome. And the great majority of people never suffer that consequence at all. So, the virus is a little bit misnamed. Now, because of fear of that virus, the solution is far worse than the problem. In other words, we know that this virus has a 99.98% survival rate. We know that people under the age of 64 have something like a 1 in 19 million chance of dying of this virus. So it is vanishingly small. And that the average age of death of COVID-19 is greater than the average life expectancy. In other words, people who were in very grave condition from other diseases and happen to be labeled a COVID death, and here in the United States, that's even financially incentivized, which also should be just an out and out, prosecuted crime, that it was financially incentivized. Anyway, and that's what happened, and a lot of deaths got labeled COVID, enough so that it caught the attention of the public, and the fear made their solution, that is the mask, worse than the disease itself. In other words, I expect a lot of, unfortunately, a respiratory illness this fall and winter in mask wearers, not from the people who are avoiding masks.
No, that's exactly it. And again, I don't want to put the words in your mouth. I'll say it, and whether you want to agree or just comment on that. I personally believe all these mask mandates is actually designed to get rid of people who are already vulnerable and sick. Just because, in my opinion, if someone has asthma, COPD, etc., by wearing the masks, they're actually going to aggravate their conditions even worse, and ultimately put themselves in the terminal condition if it was not before.
I think that is a very likely scenario. Yes.
Very scary scenario. However, the truth, unfortunately, right now is exactly that, at least in my opinion. Well, I mean, anything else would you like to share with us? Otherwise, we really appreciate all your hard work and time and dedication to this.
Well, if I may mention, on the website primary.org, if you go to the public health page, I've written several articles regarding COVID. For example, I've written an article about lockdowns and how the 6 US states that did not lock down actually had fewer deaths than the rest of the states that did lock down. So lockdowns have been proven to be a failure. I think Sweden is also proving that very nicely right now. The other paper that I would like to just mention to your listeners, if I may, is I wrote about COVID-19 as being a lack of nutrients. And the reason I say that, if I may say quickly, is only that all around the world, we are hearing studies, clinical studies from doctors who have found that either zinc plus something like hydroxychloroquine or quercetin or green tea, something to get the zinc into the cell, is eliminating COVID and eliminating the symptoms quickly without the so-called long COVID. In other words, completely resolving it. But there are other parts of the world, other studies, that show that vitamin D is accomplishing this, and yet other parts of the world where vitamin C is accomplishing this. Therefore, I proposed that COVID, what it really is a deficiency of multiple nutrients, because any one of those nutrients, just choose one, the handiest one, will resolve the COVID symptoms. And therefore, COVID-19 is really a lack of nutrients. It only happens to be exploited by a virus. You know, like vitamin D interferes with viral replication. And so if you don't have vitamin D, well, the virus is free to replicate. So.
No, yeah, I totally agree. One of the main reasons why I even became vocal initially and then became a true activist and starting this whole movement and doing our part in doing the truth education campaign and giving the alternative perspective is because I heard zero actual health advice from so-called health experts from the beginning of this whole pandemic, as I openly call it from the beginning, because I never heard them talking about using any, you know, just eating fruits and vegetables. Forget about supplementations. Never ever in this whole time they ever said, you know, please make sure you have fruits and vegetables in your diet, drink plenty of water, you know, breathe fresh air, exercise. There was zero health advice given, and now the health advice that they give is wearing a mask, vaccination, and distancing. Those are not health advices at all, right? But yeah, I totally agree with you. You know, the other thing is considering, like, even here in Canada, the Dietitians of Canada board specifically instructed their own members not being allowed to say through your diet you can boost your immune system. Insane.
Which is outrageous.
Insane.
Yeah.
Right?
Insane.
And again, like they silenced and erased any doctors or any health practitioners like chiropractors, etc., from the beginning, who said, like, no, you got to make sure you take all your vitamins and minerals, etc., because that's your best way to combat this COVID virus, right? And then all those people were even including arrests, like some doctors even in the States, I remember in the beginning, were arrested because they were giving nutrient supplementations in their clinics. It's crazy.
It is outrageous. It really is.
So, well, I mean, again, we really appreciate your hard work, and then every single doctor that's on the front line in this true sense is a true hero, in my opinion, because you are definitely under assault and attack. So we truly appreciate your courage and your hard work and dedication. And thank you so much for coming and sharing this powerful knowledge with us. And we're looking forward to have you back again after you do your next paper, please. And thank you.
Thanks so much, Vlad, and thank you for starting Hugs Over Masks. I think it's a great name and a wonderful idea and a good precedent.
Thank you. Feel free to stay around. We have Ben next coming up from Chicago. He was able to travel to a conference hosted by Robert Kennedy, etc. I'll let him introduce himself as well as share his experience. Ben, go ahead, please.
Yes, all right. So hi, I'm Ben. I'm from Chicago, and yeah, I just really wanted to mention a few quick points and some highlights about what I just had a chance to participate in, as well as what I'm going to next. So if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen and just show a couple tabs here.
Let me make you co-host. 1 second, please. Okay. I should have done that earlier. Make co-host. You should be good now. Yeah. Okay,
great. Let's see here. And so first of all, this is just my page here, Health Freedom Coalition. Just letting you know, because for now, just as it comes up, because we're doing some projects I want to bring up. But I went to the Kansas for Health Freedom Rally, and it was really powerful. Robert Kennedy Jr. Was basically the keynote speaker. Dr. Andy Wakefield and Del Bigtree, those were probably the most prominent names there. Dr. New was there as well. Just very powerful, great energy, a lot of good collaboration, great ideas. But I wanted to highlight a couple things that came out of the event. And one of them was from Del's organization, ICANN.
Mm-hmm.
And just something that Brittany Ballas, she is development director there, and she did something really fascinating, which was she has yet to wear a mask anywhere she's gone, and she's been successful at doing that. And I thought that was, I really admire that. And what she had done is, as a single, or as a mother and a business owner, she collaborated with the other business owners in her town within Kansas, and they formed, I guess you can call it a coalition.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's about 300, if I remember correctly, from within her town. They came together and they kind of spoke quietly at first. They collaborated and they agreed that we think this is unconstitutional, this is not in the best interest. And then they went to their local representative and as unified. And because of that, they had a big impact, and they were able to get away with a lot of the mandates that were going on there. So it was really a successful project. So that made us think, myself and Health Freedom Coalition, which is something we're joining, we're creating right now, in terms of what if we could roll this out as a blueprint, as kind of like we're doing with HUGS over masks, and the idea to say, how do we form a strategy? Because if one person puts their neck out and loses their license for whatever business reason, that's a probable situation. But if 100 or 1,000 did it in unison, there's a good chance they would get noticed, and there's the power in numbers. So
yeah, I was just gonna say there's power in numbers. Exactly.
Power in numbers, yeah.
I was sending that message to you.
Yeah, I thought I got that from somewhere.
There you go.
And so based on that, I've reached out to ICANN, and I'm hoping to coordinate with Brittany and get her to do a video interview to give us a bit of a blueprint and help develop that, so we have some sort of structure to roll out potentially on a global scale.
Yes.
And just that principle alone of unifying, I don't want to say behind the scenes, but in essence, yes, and then coming out together.
Yes.
So that's something that I wanted to bring up to you, and anyone who wants to collaborate with us on these ideas, of course, just send me a message.
No, it's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, no, it definitely power numbers. And, you know, the reality is, you know, and I shared this insight, I think, with you, Ben, at the first time we spoke, I guess it's been probably about a month now, that, you know, the playbook is standard. This has been done in the history before, that one of the initial steps in the tyrannical government, and this is a world government that's being installed right now in the world, is to go after the free thinking class. In other words, to suppress the uprising before it starts. And the way it's been done in the history before, and it's happening right now, is they go primarily after the small businesses. And the reason why they go after the small businesses, because those people are the one that's going to question the status quo. They're not going to be told what to do. They are the free thinkers. And the way you can suppress their actions is to economically suppress them first. And that's exactly what we've been seeing all around the world happening. And at the same time, you know, obviously, as we can see, there's obviously double standards. Somebody can be named essential and stay open and continue making all the money. And the big corporation, no coincidence, are essential apparently. So this is also the biggest wealth heist in the history of humanity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, I couldn't agree more. And, you know, I think that's happening, and everybody being caught off guard as we are today and saying, whoa, what do we do? And everyone feels this frustration. There's so much potential energy that's out there that's just dormant energy, I guess you could say, that could just is ready to be unleashed. But I just think there's this missing piece of formulating a strategy to do so. So,
well, more than anything, the challenge is, and that's why we started Hugs of a Mask, and we'll be focusing on that. And what you're doing right now is exactly makes sense. Is people missing the platform and the leadership and guidance, and then ultimately, uniting and having power numbers. And that's why, again, the isolation and distancing was part of a strategy from the beginning, because there's no sharing of ideas, people not coming together and talking to each other and making this, first of all, even question the narrative. Second of all, creating a solution to the real challenge, which is imposing on the government unconstitutional shutting down your business and impacting your whole life and actually dismantling your whole life. Because, for people who don't own the business, I can understand that don't see the whole seriousness of the situation. The person that runs the small business is a part of their life. It's part of themselves, right?
Absolutely. And it's part of themselves, part of their livelihood. And it's correlated with health. I mean, we know now from the prior studies that in the US, there was a study done back, I think it was even in the 80s, where 1% of unemployment can lead up to almost 37,000 deaths. And look at the unemployment rate that we have in the world right now, let alone the United States. So there's been this faux pas that as we all know, that if you speak up to say, we think we need to get back to work, there's you want to kill grandma, and but we understand that there's these deaths of despair, and because of that, but it's a difficult spot because we were caught off guard. We're still stunned, but we're sobering up from that, and we're now in a position where we're finding our voice and we're able to speak up and say, you know what, we need to question this now, and people are starting to pay more attention and listen.
Yeah, I really feel that the critical mass is getting reached. Again, I believe personally, and I did my best to wake up people in the beginning, the small businesses, again, the people behind the agenda, they're very intelligent and smart, right? Like everything was thought through like for decades ahead of time. So part of the strategy, how they almost like made people not to act, is to give them false sense of hope, right? So for example, in Canada, the government created this subsidies to pay part of the rent for the businesses being forced to shut down, right? And give them false sense of hope. We're only doing it for 2 weeks. We're only doing it for 2 weeks. And they kept saying it the whole time. I mean, mind you, we at the protest been saying from the beginning, no, guys, this is not going to be 2 weeks, okay? We're never going to open you. And even when they do, we're going to allow you to operate at 50% capacity at best, with all the restrictions, which is basically going to force people not to come because people don't follow the BS regulations, right? So even once they're going to allow you to open, you're not going to be able to operate and make a living anyway. But again, people were caught off guard, like you said. People were fed a false sense of hope, and that's part of a unfortunate statistic that we have in Canada. I think like almost half of the small businesses that permanently shut down. And now we have a second wave lockdown coming in full force. Our Prime Minister of Canada openly said that, we're definitely already here. We're not even waiting for it, the second wave anymore per se, because of all the case pandemic, right? Not even count. There's no deaths to count really. There's no hospitalization. They just focus on cases, which means nothing, as we know, because most people are not serious even to go to the hospital. But what I'm getting to is I really believe this time is where people will be taking action, and it's our responsibility as activists on the ground to give people directions and provide an opportunity and a platform to unite in collective actions and empower numbers, and civil disobedience is how we're going to win this.
Yeah, very, very well said. And you're right. I think it is coming to a head in many ways. We've got we're going to have funding that's going to wear out with people getting the government funding. People are going to start talking, and the frustration is going to build. People are going to wake up to the facts, and it'd be really nice to have an infrastructure in place to allow people to fuel their energy in the most productive way. So we're working on this, and this is just a strategy. We're still grassroots, very initial stages, but I know there's a lot of potential here. So we're just looking for people to kind of help this, just
For
like
sure.
you're doing. Yeah. We
Well,
push it
and
through.
just to share an idea, because this is called, recording will be shared later. So the thing that we're focusing in Canada right now is we're going to be creating a collective rally in front of city halls all across the country. And specifically, the two specific things that we're stressing and holding accountable our municipal government is the putting our children at risk and actually damaging their health with mandating the masks. And second thing is forcing small businesses to completely die out and shut down permanently because of the measures. And we're going to be rallying all the people. Right now, it's every Wednesday in front of every single city hall in all the municipalities. People are going to come together. And those are the two main things that we're going to be discussing and making sure that people understand that shouldn't be happening. And in fact, we need to push our local municipal governments to get rid of all these measures, or at least allow it to be voluntary. Whoever wants to follow them, they do. Otherwise, people should be able to conduct their lives and their businesses as they see fit. And if somebody doesn't feel safe going to somebody's business, nobody's forcing them to go there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it goes without saying the amazing job going up in Canada, what you and others are doing to rally. And I'm trying to spark some of the energy here in Chicago and elsewhere. And that might be a quick segue just to let you know one of the events coming up if anyone is in the
Yes.
US.
Yes.
There we go. It's this one, actually. There's two of them. There's a thank you body rally. Has everyone heard of this? This is with SAYERG, the Green Med Info. So if you haven't, it's just more, I would only think it's calling it a rally, not a protest. It's on October 16th.
Yeah.
So just thankyoubodyrally.com.
Beautiful. I love it. I
Yep,
love the message.
Yeah, it's a great message. I'm going to be heading down there. And before I do go down there, I think I showed you a sneak peek here, was the Red Pill Expo.
Yeah.
So that is just coming a few days before on Jekyll Island,
Yes.
where the Federal Reserve was allegedly
Some amazing guest speakers there, huh?
There's some amazing, Mickey Willis is going to be there. And as you can see here,
Andy Kaufman, Del Bigtree,
yeah, it's going to be quite a lineup.
Amazing.
So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. One more thing, that project that we are working on is Ohio Stands Up.
Okay.
And what this is basically it's this organization by two lawyers based out of Ohio. Tom Rentz is I think the lead on this. I had a chance to connect with him, communicate, and he is suing the state of Ohio. It's filing a lawsuit to remove the unconstitutional emergency order.
Yeah.
And he's not only getting a lot of attention, but they think that they realize they have a pretty solid case.
Great.
And he had offered in some of his discussions that he's willing to help other lawyers to understand how he's going about this so they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
So they can draft a similar lawsuit in their own jurisdictions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, this is another blueprint. And this is already being rolled out as well. So
Awesome.
That's kind of the theme here, is seeing what's working and seeing how we can scale it.
No,
so
that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Have you heard of a ruling in Pennsylvania? I think, was it the judge that declared the emergency unconstitutional? Do you have some feedback for that?
Yeah, I did hear about that yesterday or the day before, and I'm excited to get into the details on what it's about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, any other comments would you like to make? Otherwise, I see we have our other guest speaker came on right now. I'd love to give him an opportunity to speak as well.
No, yeah, that was it. I just wanted to 5 or 10 minutes to share some of these highlights, let you know what we've got going on, and say thanks for the amazing work you're doing as well. So.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for your knowledge and activism, and then all the future projects that you're going to help us create, again, to raise humanity all around the world. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to give opportunity to Boris. I'm not sure if you can speak up, please.
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Good. So What should I do? Actually, I have so many things to say.
So
You know?
first of all, we're being recorded, just to give you full disclosure. So this is recording. So be mindful of that. Otherwise, whatever would you like to share in terms of your perspective, prior to COVID measures, if you have any insight for us to offer, as well as obviously during these times, and then anything recently that you were able to discover that maybe even surprised you or caught you off guard.
Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is
Please.
Boris Bobovoy. Many years ago, to be precise, in 1997, received master degree in public health. Unfortunately, in this country, it was virtually impossible to get into this field, and I was working for 20 years as a nuclear medicine technologist, staying in the medical field and watching inside how the system is working. I was furloughed March 29th, to be exact, and since that, I just returned to my old trade. So right now, I'm independent researcher in the field of public health. So I just returned to my previous, actually, specialty. And what I see just make me, well, I just try to find the words.
I know. You and me both.
Teutonicum, to say in Latin, you know, I just really, I'm angry, I'm pissed off, really pissed off. And what I see, the whole system actually is unfunctional. The whole healthcare system is unfunctional. The whole civil defense system is unfunctional. The whole field of healthcare, of public health, just, you know, occupied by charlatans, in my opinion. Sorry for strong words, but
that's fair.
The words for people who just don't know anything about epidemic process, about homeostasis, about dynamic deliverance in a post-parasitic systems, etc., etc. Their models so primitive, so just it's what can I say? It's unbelievably, you know, they can listen it 100 times and 1,000 times. They create completely unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable models, and still be able to have own seeds, and this is amazing. Actually,
to me,
seeds lost their job completely, and this is it.
To me, I think, and I already made that statement earlier before I think you were jumped on, I personally believe it can't be that negligent. It's actually premeditated. In other words, we're doing it on purpose. That's my statement. Like they purposely...
They don't do this on purpose. It just kind of hive mind, and just chicken came home to roast. 20 years ago, when I tried to find, 22 years ago, when I tried to find myself in this field, I just found my job is totally unexistent, totally unexistent. Nobody just understand what I'm talking about. So I just quit immediately and start looking for something else. In this country, civil defense, military epidemiology, defense of the troops and defense of the civil population is non-existent, period. No idea about how to defeat any kind of serious infection. And this infection is not so serious. And just, you know what, we're lucky. We're very lucky to have this infection. It's not premeditated. It's just the whole system shows incompetency to the highest level.
Okay. Well, and then...
Why I'm here, actually, thank you, Colleen.
Yes.
Thank you for invitation. I'm here to do some research, actually helping Colleen Bell to do some research on a false prophecy of the masks, because this is the most important issue, and we have a lot of information of occupational diseases, and these occupational diseases got to be very common diseases in a very short time. That's what we're working around. Yes. And thank you again to Colleen Bell. I was able to find such outrageous, really outrageous things, really outrageous. We got into a really outrageous situation. So we need to scream literally on every corner that what they doing with the populace just absolutely unacceptable. It's absolutely unbelievable how unprofessional, how primitive they doing in the field of public health.
Got it. Got it.
I'm
No,
not buying that it was premeditated, it was
no.
planned in. They're too stupid to plan anything. They just plan, they cannot plan their lunch for tomorrow. You know, talk to these people and just, you know what, I can believe how stupid they are. That's
But
why
maybe the people that you're talking to are placed there for reasons, so they're incompetent. You know, I again, it's just my opinion. I'm not forcing it on you, but I believe the people behind the agenda, you know, it's structured and organized for many decades. But
let me be a little bit more historical here,
please.
okay? You know when it started? It started in 1910 when J.D. Rockefeller and his buddy, criminal named Teddy Roosevelt, godfather of deep state, you know, start creating medical education and medical and health system in United States. What they make is just in a totally criminal medical system. It's absolutely unworking. It was working somehow, somewhat, you know, for maybe 1 century, but in 2010, when first SARS epidemic just jumped, it was really clear for me. I started start showing interest in this field. It was clear for me. Next serious epidemic is got to completely smash the whole system. They create absolutely unworking system with a bunch of middlemen. Too many licensing, too much licensing, too much of level of bureaucracy, too much of everything, every possible move just completely regulated and controlled. And what we see right now, doctors cannot anymore think and do anything by themselves. They just following instructions. You know, the major thing in a Hippocratic oath is do not
no harm. Yes, I agree.
Yes, you know, they just following instruction. Why? Because nobody wants to lose their jobs. Nobody wants to lose their income. Nobody wants to lose their beautiful lifestyle. You know, that's it. So the whole history, the whole story started century ago. And right now we see completely fiasco of what was created in 1910 by Teddy Roosevelt and J.D. Rockefeller.
I agree. Yeah, well, I mean, again, I want to acknowledge yourself and already I said, Dr. Hubert, thank you so much for all the hard work. There's obviously not enough of people like yourself with courage and passion to make sure that truth comes out. So again, I want to thank for all the work that you've already done and everything that you're going to do going forward. We look forward to having you back once you complete the next paper we discussed about the dangers of mold, etc. That's definitely going to be a real issue for children and adults happening.
Not only mouth infections.
Yes, exactly.
Whatever you have in your mouth getting into your body, into your blood, it can create the wide range of diseases. And this is just totally unacceptable, totally, it's insane.
It is.
It would be, for example, chronic pericarditis, atopical dermatitis, you name it. Everything is going to be just jumping up. It's going to be explosion of such infection in unbelievable scale.
Yeah. So again, keep us posted. As soon as you finish that paper, we would love to have you back and share all the real data information with us. And this particular recording, we're definitely gonna share it, and as many people can watch this and get this information and be empowered and with alternative perspective. We definitely believe what we're doing is the right work, because we can see transformation of people once we give them an opportunity to see the real facts. We do have so-called success stories where people are, they transformed, they actually open their eyes. It's like, oh, wow, I can't believe this is the truth. So there is hope in our work. So I want to encourage you and empower you, continue doing the work, because we see that we are the people on the ground doing the activist work and talking to people on a daily basis. We see that it makes a difference. So again, I just want to acknowledge and thank you for continuing doing what you guys are going to do and give us more information to empower people, because we're going to combat the brainwashing fear propaganda that's created by the government and media. And thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Well, we're gonna continue with this session. Again, I just wanna ask if anyone got value from this Friday, and we're gonna continue having different guests every Friday. We ask for donation to our PayPal to continue building this movement and supporting everything else. We always appreciate any donations you feel feasible based on your circumstances. And then again, I want to appreciate Dr. Uber Ben and then Boris for coming on and sharing their experience and their knowledge, and then giving you the courage to continue doing the great work that all of us doing. And you know, humanity will prevail. We've been here before, we defeated evil before, and with great people like yourself, we're gonna do this again. So thank you everybody for coming on board. I'm gonna stop the recording and we'll see everybody very soon.